In 1999, 10-year-old Crystal Sorrells was a carefree and joyful girl living in Del Rio, Texas with her mother and two younger sisters. Her best friend, Katie Harris, lived nearby, and the two were inseparable. They often played together and had sleepovers at each other's homes. On New Year's Eve, December 31st, Crystal was allowed by her mother to celebrate the holiday at Katie's house and spend the night. That evening, the two girls giggled and chatted late into the night from their bunk beds, Katie on the bottom, Crystal on the top. It was a perfect night for them, full of laughter and friendship. But that joy was about to turn into a nightmare neither of them could have imagined. Around 3:30 in the morning, a man was startled awake by frantic knocking at his door. Still groggy, he opened it and was met with a horrifying sight. A little girl in pajamas, drenched in blood, her neck badly injured, unable to speak. She shakily wrote on a piece of paper, "Harris family, need help, please send someone quickly." Then she added, "Am I going to live?" The man immediately called 911. Meanwhile, Crystal's mother received the call that no parent ever wants to get. She rushed to the hospital, where doctors informed her that Crystal's trachea and vocal cords had been severed. Despite the severity of her injuries, Crystal miraculously survived and regained consciousness the next day. Though she couldn't speak, she was able to communicate with pen and paper. Her first question was heartbreaking. "Is Katie okay?" Her mother couldn't bring herself to deliver the painful truth. Katie Harris had been killed. Crystal was the only person who knew what really happened that night. When police arrived at the Harris home, they found Katie's body in a pool of blood. The brutality of the scene shocked even the most seasoned officers. From her hospital bed, Crystal worked with a professional police sketch artist to describe the attacker. The artist, who was trained in forensic drawing, carefully brought her words to life. Bet, the face of the killer took shape. A family friend of Crystal saw the sketch and thought it looked familiar. He recalled someone named Tommy Lynn Sells, who worked at a local used car lot and resembled the drawing. Police pulled Tommy's photo and included it among several similar images for Crystal to identify. She pointed to him without hesitation. Authorities quickly located Tommy Lynn Sells, who was living in a trailer. When officers arrived, he didn't resist arrest. Instead, he smiled and said, "I'm glad you caught me." Tommy immediately confessed to the crime and appeared cooperative. But his behavior turned even more alarming when, back at the station, he began confessing to a series of murders spanning 2 decades. Tommy Lynn Sells admitted to committing 22 murders across multiple states over 20 years. Crystal was the first and only known survivor of his attacks. After her recovery, Crystal Sorrells slowly regained her ability to speak, and when she could finally use her voice again, she bravely told investigators everything she remembered about that terrifying night. It was around 3 a.m. on December 31st. Crystal and her best friend Katie were sound asleep. Then suddenly, Crystal was jolted awake by a loud scream. At first, she was disoriented, unsure of what was happening. But then she looked toward the foot of the bed, and that's when she saw him. A man was standing there, holding Katie, and in his hand was a knife. Katie cried out and told Crystal to run, to go get help. But before Crystal could react, the man harmed Katie and left her unconscious on the floor. Crystal froze in fear. She stayed absolutely still, trying not to make a sound. But then, the man noticed her lying on the top bunk. He started walking toward her. Crystal quickly closed her eyes and pretended to be unconscious, hoping he would leave. After what felt like a lifetime, the man finally walked away. When she felt it was safe, Crystal climbed down from the bed. She saw Katie still on the floor, struggling to breathe. Crystal laid down beside her and gently rubbed her back. She wanted to tell Katie that everything was going to be okay, but no words would come out. Her voice was gone. Crystal thought about running to the bedroom where Katie's parents were sleeping, but she hesitated. What if the man was still in there? What if they were already hurt? She didn't know, but she knew she had to act. So holding her bleeding neck with one hand, Crystal opened the front door and walked out into the dark, cold night. looking for help. On January 2, 2000, Crystal felt some relief. The man who had done this had been found and arrested. But her journey wasn't over. 9 months later, she would have to face him again, this time in court, because Crystal was the most important witness in the case. A few weeks before the trial, the story of Katie and Crystal was featured on America's Most Wanted. The show arranged for Crystal to meet another brave girl who had been through something similar. Her name was Christy, a 14-year-old who had survived a brutal attack while walking home from school in 1999. Christy had stood in court and faced the man who took her sister's life. She shared with Crystal that she wore a lucky ring during the trial, something small that gave her strength. On September 12, 2000, exactly 9 months after the attack, the trial against Tommy Lynn Sells began. Katie's parents gave a heartfelt statement that brought the courtroom to tears. Meanwhile, Tommy sat expressionless, showing no emotion. Then came Crystal's turn. She was only 10 years old. The man who had taken her best friend sat just a few feet away. Despite preparing for this moment for months, Crystal was still visibly nervous. No one knew how she would react when she came face to face with him. But then, Crystal received a small but powerful gift, Christy's lucky ring. With that ring in hand, Crystal walked straight past the man who once tried to silence her forever and stood at the witness stand to speak her truth. She could have taken a side entrance to avoid him, but she didn't. She wanted to show that she was no longer afraid. She clutched the ring tightly as she testified. A few hours later, after deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict. Tommy Lynn Sells was sentenced to death. Thanks to the courage of a 10-year-old girl, he would never harm another innocent person again. But even for someone as strong as Crystal, healing took time. She spent much of her childhood recovering, not just physically, but emotionally, and as we know, emotional scars often take longer to heal than physical ones. Still, there's a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Coming so close to death made Crystal appreciate life in a way few people ever do. She went on to graduate from college, make new friends, and build close bonds with her younger sisters. Crystal Sorrells is living proof that even after unimaginable trauma, life can still be beautiful and worth living.